Hello Marvel fans and welcome back to Nerd Doc. This video will contain spoilers for Thor Love and Thunder. If you do not wish to be spoiled, you can check out our spoiler-free review linked in the description below, then come back after you've seen the movie. If you have any questions or theories about Hercules in the MCU, leave a comment below and we'll respond as best we can. With all that out of the way, the first post-credit scene in Thor Love and Thunder shows Zeus talking to Hercules about making humans fear the gods again, and Hercules going after Thor. That pretty much confirms Hercules will be in the next Thor movie or possibly in a different movie that features Thor as a prominent character. We already discussed Thor's future in the MCU in another video that you can find linked below. Hercules in the MCU is played by Brett Goldstein, who you might know as Roy Kent in the Ted Lasso series. In the comics, Hercules is very similar to the Greek mythology version of the character. In some ways, he's leveled up to be able to compete with the many superpowered heroes and villains within the pages of Marvel Comics, but his power level fluctuates quite a bit depending on the specific comic you're reading. At the very least, Hercules will be able to fight evenly with Thor in the MCU, but it's hard to say much more than that at this point. Hercules is immortal in the comics, like Zeus, which means he will be extremely difficult to kill, very similar to Thor in the MCU. One aspect of Hercules in the comics that would be interesting to see in the MCU is that he can kind of go into rage mode. There have been times in the comics when Hercules was tremendously angered or being controlled by someone else to be angered, and he went into a fit of rage similar to the Hulk in comics. In this state, he's unable to control himself and no longer sees friends or enemies, just people he needs to smash. Since we have yet to really see a proper crazy Hulk in the modern MCU, having Hercules fill that role would actually be kind of interesting. It's also something that he's literally done in the comics in the pages of The Incredible Hercules. While the credit scene in Love and Thunder makes Hercules out to be a bad guy, he probably won't be an antagonist for very long. In the comics, Hercules is often an ally to Thor and the Avengers, even becoming an Avenger himself at various times. For the most part, Hercules considers Thor a rival, but that's usually as far as it goes. There are some occasions when they fight, but it doesn't happen very often. With that in mind, whatever happens in Thor 5, Hercules is unlikely to be the main villain, or even stay a villain throughout the entire film. There will almost certainly be a big bad controlling the events of the film, which will force Thor and Hercules to team up in order to stop him. Many of Hercules' adventures in the comics deal with him interacting with the Marvel versions of the various Greek gods, either stopping some evil plan, being forced to do things against his will for various reasons, or joining them to fight some greater threat. While we saw Zeus in Love and Thunder, it seems unlikely at this point that the MCU is going all in on the Greek gods, but it's not entirely out of the question. The Enchantress, also known as Amora, has had a hand in Hercules being a bad guy and could take part in the War of the Realms that may come up in the rumored Jane Foster solo project or potentially Thor 5. With what little information we have right now, it seems at least somewhat likely that whatever storyline Marvel goes with for Thor's next adventure, Enchantress could be part of it alongside Hercules. In the comics, Hercules has been involved in a lot of storylines. Hercules has fought against Baron Zemo and his Masters of Evil, the High Evolutionary who will appear in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3, the Celestials who we saw cameo in Love and Thunder after being featured prominently in the Eternals, Kang, who is about to play a big role in the MCU, Onslaught, who could be a likely foe for the X-Men once they properly arrive in the MCU, and more. With so many Hercules comic book arcs to choose from, World War Hulk stands out the most to us. In the comics, Hercules sides with Amadeus Cho and Hulk and tries to help him, although it doesn't really work out for Hercules in the end. We already know the rumored MCU version of World War Hulk would have to change a number of things from the comics. With Hercules being introduced as an antagonist, it's plausible that we next see him in World War Hulk siding with Hulk and potentially fighting against Thor. Now we know that Thor doesn't play a role in World War Hulk in the comics, but he also wasn't part of Planet Hulk, and Marvel literally combined Planet Hulk with Thor Ragnarok. It's certainly not out of the question for the MCU version of World War Hulk to include the Hercules and Thor battle that Zeus is expecting to see, before Hercules eventually allies with Thor and the Avengers. One of the most interesting Hercules stories in the comics is Chaos War. In this series, Hercules basically became the god of gods and reached Omega levels of power, meaning he was one of the most powerful beings in all of Marvel Comics for a very limited time. The MCU probably isn't going to immediately go that route, but once Hercules shifts over to being a good guy like he is in the comics, which is bound to happen, The Chaos War would be crazy to see happen in the MCU. So how do you see Hercules being involved in the MCU? How long do you think he'll be a villain? Let us know what you think in the comments below. For now, that wraps up this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves Hercules, Greek mythology, and the MCU.